It is time for your WIN podcast for super busy professionals sharing transformational moments. Your host, Chu Tang.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on your WIN podcast. Today, I have my special guest, James, all the way from Big Island, Hawaii. Welcome, James.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thanks, James. So, James, you probably have a lot of transformational moments that you experience in your life. Would you share one with our audience that transformed you forever?
Sure, I'd love to. I was a chiropractor in New Mexico for 10 years. And along with having been trained as a chiropractor, and even before that, I had also studied and done some trainings with a lot of alternative types of healing and yoga disciplines and a lot of esoteric types of investigations. That just really has always fascinated me. Like what is beyond the mind, and what are the limits of human consciousness?
Okay.
That sort of thing really, it keeps me going, honestly. It really does. Just to go into that mystery again and again. And so while I was practicing basically standard chiropractic, having been trained in that for 3.5 years at college, I was still on the side doing investigations into other alternative practices. And so eventually, those alternative practices started to inform the standard chiropractic approach, such that I started getting, I'll give you an example. So one thing I did study was reiki.
Okay.
I did a couple of trainings in reiki. And of course, the point there is to develop your sensitivity to your own energy field as well as others. And to start to experience how the connection to your own field and others is a source of healing, can be a source of healing. That's, one of the major uses for it. So in my chiropractic, I started to develop a sense or a feeling about somebody's joint misalignments without really touching them physically.
Oh, wow.
I could start to feel, just holding my hand above their spine, I could start to feel areas that were resistant. Like if I ran my hand down the person's spine, I could feel areas of resistance. And then I used the typical chiropractic protocol to double check whether those were the areas that were there that needed to be adjusted. And there was always a correspondence there.
Oh, wow.
So I started to rely much more heavily on my intuition and my sense of the person's energy field more than the standard protocol that I had learned in school.
Okay.
What I'd learned in school gave me a good jumping off point. And then those other practices of an alternative nature that I'd been investigating for years, they just started coming in and informing the treatments I was doing.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a really wonderful confluence of influences. And then one day, I realized, so I had a full plastic skeleton in the office that I used for educational purposes. And one day I had somebody on the adjusting table, and I was just looking at the plastic skeleton just to get reinforce in my mind what the person's spine looked like.
Right.
And I started to feel the misalignments on the plastic skeleton. It was just kind of a spontaneous experience. But it also really just followed from everything that went before that, just becoming more and more sensitive to energy. And realizing, oh, I can use the plastic skeleton as a surrogate for the person on the table.
Okay.
And I can actually check them, sometimes in a more precise way on the plastic skeleton than I could on the physical person.
Wow.
So after a while, what followed was, I can make adjustments on the plastic skeleton, and it will correspondingly adjust that person's physical body. Eventually, I realized, you know what? I don't even have to have them in the office.
Okay.
I started slowly. I started slowly, every now and then, doing adjustments for people remotely. Because I would use this plastic skeleton to both diagnose and adjust somebody who was not in the office. And it worked.
It works.
It worked just as well as if they were in the office.
So do you have to clear the energy after each patient?
Well, I'll tell you what I did have to do before each patient, which is ground myself.
Okay.
And the way I do that is I just feel my feet connected to the earth. And I make sure my breathing is in my belly, a good yogic breath. And then I just touch the top of my head briefly.
Okay.
And that brings me back into my own body, and I have the best connection possible to the client.
So do you have to think about the name, or they show you a picture?
Strangely enough, no. Somebody could just say to me, I have a friend who has a shoulder problem.
Okay.
Can you look at them? And they don't have to give me a name. They don't have to give me a description. I mean, yes, that's useful in a way, but I don't need it, because the person who's giving me the information already has in their own mind a vision of who they're referring to me. And somehow I pick up on that.
Wow, this is very interesting, because there's so many things we don't know.
That's an understatement.
Wow.
After a while, I was doing most of my adjustments off the body, so I wasn't really touching the client.
Right.
And so I was combining things. I used to use an activator instrument, which is a little spring-loaded adjusting instrument. So I was doing about half and half.
Okay.
Half on the body, half off the body. But eventually you just say to yourself, I don't really need to do that. Why am I continuing to use this instrument if I don't really need it?
Okay.
But what that led to was I can't really call this chiropractic anymore.
Okay.
Because when people look for a chiropractor in the yellow pages, that's not what they want somebody who's going to adjust them physically.
Right.
Then I made the decision, okay, I'm just going to do this remotely. And I'm going to call it something else that's related to energy work.
Mm-hmm.
And once I made that decision, I started getting more and more access to non-physical factors in people's health, like emotional factors and psychological factors and psychic factors. And, one thing I want to say, though, is that I always start with myself. My own body is the laboratory.
Okay.
If I'm trying out any new technique, it's always on myself, or getting deeper access to something, it's always starts here. And then that translates into having more access to a client. If I have it in myself first.
Right.
So I would say that transformational moment was that plastic skeleton experience of, it was just such a dramatic illustration of the physical body is not what we think it is.
Wow.
It's so much more vast and so much more mysterious.
No, I totally believe you because I had a real personal experience. I injured myself from not warming up when I was doing exercise. And then my rotator cuff, it was so painful. I could not lift my left arm. And so I went to see osteopath, physical therapist. No one could fix me. And then one day I met this Reiki master, and she lives in Atlanta, right? And I live in California.
Right.
And it was just just one session.
Wow.
And now you can see my left arm, I could move. Yeah. And I don't know how, but
yeah. Who cares, right?
Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. Yeah.
The one thing it points out is the limitation of standard medicine as far as believing so strictly that the physical self is the primary self.
Right.
Because it really limits the healing potential of a treatment.
Yep. It's a good paradigm shift. We're not limited to just the physical cell. I think the physical cell is just only a very small portion of it.
Totally.
Yeah. Wow.
When I talk to clients, I describe it like the physical self is the last stop on the subway.
Oh.
Everything that shows up in the physical body as a symptom or an illness has already had some sort of precursor, the emotional self or the energy field, some place that's non-physical.
Non-physical. So by the time it shows up in the physical, it's the last stop of the subway.
Right.
Wow, James, I definitely did not expect this type of transformational moment. Wow.
I didn't either.
Yeah, thank you so much. And our audience, if you like this episode, come back. And until then, stay happy and hopeful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share. See you soon at Your Win Podcast.